Great. As you guys put those answers in the chat, just real quick, yeah, this is a different workshop slash demo than what we've done in the past. So in this one, we're really focusing on creating your own questions. So just a little bit of background is when I first started positive physics, I was just looking for a place where I had all these worksheets I thought were pretty good. And I wanted a place where we could put them online, give students instant feedback, randomize numbers. And a friend and I ended up building this whole site because we couldn't find a place like that. And so our dream, even from the start, was to open up that to everyone else, to give everyone else the power to create their own questions. And we're pretty excited to have that ready for you guys. So as we do this, feel free to ask questions anytime in the chat as Abby or I go over to anything. We're going to show you how to create just a simple numerical problem first, and then Abby's really good, especially on the chemistry side, at randomizing word problems. We have graph problems. We have, I was just working on today, it's not quite out yet, but the ability to create your own PhET-like simulations, which I'm really excited about, and I'll be spending way too much time on those over the summer. And then also, if there are any questions that you guys want to create, um, yeah, really want to leave some time at the end um, to do that. Roberta asked, being able to draw the cool little stick figures, that's probably going to have to be a whole separate workshop on that. But but I should tell you guys that Abby and I use PowerPoint to create all of the images on there. A lot of people are surprised by that, but you can do a ton with PowerPoint and the little line drawing tools. So real quick, I know there are a few people who mentioned in the sign up that they're brand new to using positive physics and chemistry. So I'm going to give like a 1 minute introduction to that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Abby to show you how to create your own questions. All right, so just real quick, if you haven't used positive physics or chemistry or STEM before, by the way, you can use positivephysics.org, positivechemistry.org, or positivestem.org. They all take you to the same place. The real basics are it is a huge problem bank that gives students instant feedback. So when they get something right, things turn green. If they get something wrong, they see a little red X, but they can fix it. Any value that you see in blue is a randomized number. And we're going to show you how to create questions just like this. Again, if you have any questions anytime, feel free to ask. I'm a tiny bit under the weather, so I'm going to let Abby take over from here. But yeah, if you have any questions while she's going over these, please ask anytime. We've got a relatively small group, so you can unmute yourself if you like, or I'll be monitoring the chat if you have questions. So let me stop sharing and I'll turn it over to Abby.
Awesome. Okay, let me share my screen now. Okay, you saying positive physics?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so firstly, to get to the custom problem creator, you click on the advanced tab at the top and click on create questions and lessons. And that takes you to this page. So you can click create new question, or you can click on these editable sample problems. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples today. So we have one set up already. Okay, so this is an example of a problem that you might write that you want to randomize. So I'm going to show you how you could add some randomization to this problem. So to start with, we've got a bicyclist speeding up from rest. Let's say I want to randomize the final speed that they reach. So to do that, instead of having a number hard-coded in there, I can click var, which makes as a variable. And you can see if I typed in 10 there, it would show up as 10. On the right-hand side, you can see there's a preview of what our problem will look like. Let's say I wanted to randomize this. We can use this function rand. So we write rand, and then we put the lower number that it might be. So say my lowest value was 10, then the higher number, say my higher value was 15, and then the number of significant figures we want. And that gives me a random number. So I'm going to click reset, and you can see right now it's 12.9. When I reset it, it's 10.5 or whatever else it might be. So that's what this rand function does, and that's super helpful. However, I need to name this variable something because I'm going to need to use it in my calculations. So I'm going to call this VF. So I've got VF now saved kind of in the system, so I can use that in a calculation later on in the question if I want to. So I've created a random number for the final speed. Then it says during a 5-second time interval. So I can also have a random number for the time. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to call it T. This time I'm going to show you a different way you can do it. So you can define variables just directly like I've shown here in that kind of blue bit, or you can go down to where it says extra math underneath, and you can just write T equals, and we can do the same thing again. We can get a random number, let's say between 20 and 25 with 3 significant figures. So I've defined my number in the extra math down here, but you can see it's showing up here, 24.1 right now as my random number. So those are 2 ways of kind of defining something. You can do it in the question, or you can do it in the extra math. So now I've got my random numbers defined for me. My next step is to calculate my answers. So what was her acceleration? So if you click on the ans button here, it creates one of those yellow answer boxes. And in here, it works like math. We just have to type in the equation for what we're trying to do. So for my acceleration, I can just use VF divided by T. And those are both things I've already defined. So it's going to use the VF from here. It's going to use the T from here to get me my answer. And I can add my unit as well. And then how far did she travel during this time? I can click answer. I'm going to call this D for distance. Just as I mentioned before, you can type stuff directly in here, or you could define it in the extra math. So I'll do it in the extra math this time. So for D, that would be half times acceleration times time squared. So you can see I can either type out my equation in the answer box itself, or I can just write D, and then I can define what D means in the extra math. Both of those ways work. You could do it all in the question. You could do it all in the extra math. It's kind of up to you. I prefer to do it in the extra math so I can kind of keep it all organized down there. But both of those work. One more thing I'll show you is you can add an image. So let's say I want to add an image. I click on this image/vid button here. I'm going to click insert my existing image. So I already made an image for this. Oh, sorry. I clicked on the wrong thing. Image/vid. I'm uploading a new image. Choose my file. I called it demo image 1. So I'm just going to name it demo 1 image here. Click add image. And I've got my image. I meant to put it down here actually. So I'm just going to copy and paste that down here. So it's uploaded my image for me. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so we can see that. So there's my image added. So this could be the end of the problem that I've created, or I could add some labels as well. To do that, you click on the button that says label, and you do that kind of within the light green image kind of button thing that I'm in right now. Let's say I want to have a label that says initial, and I want to put it above the first cyclist. So this is where I have my coordinates. So if I had 0, 0, that kind of in the top left of my image. If I had 100 and 100, that puts it in the bottom right all the way down there. So I'm going to want it somewhere around like 10, maybe somewhere around like 40. So you can play around with exactly where you want the label to be. So yeah, so that's a little example of just coming up with a simple like randomized variable for a couple of things, putting in your equations, and then how to make an image with a label.
And real quick, Abby, there were a few questions in the chat that I'm going to take.
Okay.
So people asked about like so we have like that rand function and the notation. And so I just wanted to point out a couple things. Abby, if you scroll down on the page, there are a whole bunch of notes that show you how to do everything. So yeah, definitely those are really valuable. They'll show you how to do all the things that you need to know. Also, if you go to the top, if you scroll back up, we added these in fairly recently, but if you click on any of those, it'll open up these editable sample problems. It'll open up a new tab, and there'll be a problem that I've already made that you can edit, and you can even save it as your own. But yeah, looking at those is super helpful. I'm going to update the simulation ones very soon with our latest simulations. Jim also asked a really good question. I really love that people like our stick figures and want to use them. So if you want to use the images that we've created, the best way to do that, this problem editor is a little bit new. So our original problems were made on an older, much harder editor. So the best way to do it is just like find a problem of ours that you like, right click on the image and download it to your computer, and then just re-upload it kind of the way that Abby did it. You have our permission to use those images as much as you want. So yes, feel free to use those as much as you'd like. It's a little bit tedious, I know, to download it, but then and re-upload it, but it goes pretty quick. And then Abby, could you do one other thing? Could you show them
Mhm.
how to where you put the units and just kind of wrote those in? Could you show them how to put in like a multiple choice box?
For sure, yeah.
Oh,
So,
perfect. Ted was just asking the exact same thing.
oh, awesome. Yeah, so if we want to create a units answer box, for example, MC is the multiple choice box. So the way that you write this out is you write the correct answer, so meters per second. Then you put a colon, and then you put the options you want to list. So my options might be meters, seconds, meters per second, with a comma in between the options. So you can see I've got my 4 options there. And then the first thing I wrote, that's going to be my correct answer. So that's how you get that set up. Yeah, does that cover that?
Yep, exactly. Um, yeah, and again, the notation for that is right below it.
Yeah,
Um,
here as well.
Yep. And then somebody asked, they said the image seems to be shifted way to the right. So kind of what's going on there is that we really found it most useful to create these questions if you have what we call the markup text on the screen, like right next to the preview. And so yes, like right now it looks like the image is shifted off the page, but this problem will look beautiful when you insert it into your course and actually use it. And actually, like if your problem got too wide, it automatically puts the image underneath. But yeah, like since we just don't have like the full space right now, it does look like that image is being cut off. But trust me, it'll look beautiful when you insert it into your own course. And speaking of which, oh yeah, quick question, and then Abby will show you how to insert this into your course. Laura asked a really good question about you put meters per second. Could you show people or tell people how to put in squared?
Yes. So there are some things we can do. Say I was typing meters per second squared here. I can use the little buttons here to make that a superscript. But that doesn't actually work in the multiple choice box. If I try to put a superscript in there, it doesn't work. It comes up with an error. So instead, what we have to do is find a symbol that is a superscript 2. So you can just Google like superscript 2 symbol, or if you scroll down right at the bottom here, there's a bunch here you can copy and paste. So I usually scroll down to the bottom. I would copy that superscript 2 symbol, and then I would pop that in. Pop that in there. So now I've got meters per second squared showing up, and that would be my answer. So yeah, so you can use special symbols in the drop-down box, but you can't use like formatting in the drop-down box.
And then one other thing before I forget this is I anticipate this will definitely like there'll definitely be challenges as you create your courses. Abby and I are always happy to help you out. One other really good place is if you're creating a question and you want to like and have a question about it, or you just create something really cool and want to share it. We did fairly recently create a Facebook group for people to collaborate. And so putting a screenshot of your question with a question in there, then not only can we answer it for you, we can also answer it for everyone else. Um, yeah, so Jim, exactly. Unicode will work everywhere in here, like in the regular problem itself, as well as within those multiple choice tabs. And Roberta just shared a really helpful link in the chat. Yeah, and Abby, will you show somebody how to create their own course and then insert their question into their course?
Yes. Okay, so now let's go create our course. So I made a question called demo one. I'm just going to remember that. So now I'm going back to advanced at the top. So far we used create questions and lessons. Now we're going to go to create courses, units, and skills. So if I click on that, it brings me to this place. So first step is create a course to put your questions in. So I'm going to call it Abby's course. Okay. So we now have a course named Abby's course. Now I want to add a unit called Abby's unit. So that's in the second bit, add unit. So I choose the course, and you can give it a number like 1 or something if you want to have them in a certain order. So that's added. Then I can add a skill in that unit. And the skill is, if you've used positive physics before, those are just all the bits that show up on each like unit page. So that's how you kind of keep your questions organized. So I'll call this one acceleration, for example. Okay, so I've created my course, I added a unit, I added a skill in that unit. So if I go to my dashboard now and I find Abby's course, you can see we're in unit 1, Abby's unit, and there's my skill I made called acceleration. So that's how you make your course. And then to insert a question, I go to insert questions. I find my course, I find my unit, I find the relevant skill, and then I just type in the name of the problem I made. And demo 1 is the one I want to add right now. So I click that and then I save. Now, if we head back to the dashboard again, here's my unit I made. There's one question in this skill, and that's the problem that we just made. So that's how you get set up with your unit. One other thing I should mention, if you go back to advanced, back to create courses, units, and skills, those first 3 boxes are how you create new skills or new units. But you can scroll down here and you can see what already exists, and you can change. So you want to change the name or change the order. You can add a random question order if you like. So all that stuff can be changed on this page as well.
Yeah, one other quick thing that somebody asked when they were signing up is they said, can I share this with my colleagues? And the answer is yes, almost. If you scroll down just a little bit, this is a still feature we're just finishing up. Abby, will you scroll down just slightly more? So if you have a colleague that wants to use your course, eventually in the lower right where it says course share code, there'll just be a code right there. You can just give that to another teacher that works at your school or that you collaborate with. And then Abby, if you scroll up just slightly, then that teacher can type it in right here, click on add course, and it'll be like read only access to your course. And so they'll be able to make some like small modifications, like removing problems just for their students, but they won't be able to make any structural changes or change your problems. So it's always safe to share it with your colleagues. Um, and yes, so Roberta, you can pick questions. You can mix and match that with the questions that we've created for you as well. So there's a whole bunch we could probably do a whole nother topic just on that. But yeah, on the left-hand side, you see this clone unit and clone skills. If you want to copy a whole unit or a whole skill from one of our courses into yours, you can do that. Or you can even, when Abby was on the insert questions mode, if you go and look up the name of one of our problems, you can insert our problems into your skill as well. Um, Great. Yeah, I guess Abby, will you show them kind of the next demo question we had planned? And oh, I should have answered that. Yeah, Roberta, if you're on your dashboard and you like go in and you're looking at a question and you just hover over the question button in the upper right hand corner, you'll see the every question has a name. Abby's going to show you right now. So if you
Like
just
say your
oh,
question. Yeah,
I
first.
don't okay, yeah. So that's the name of the question.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going back to create questions and lessons. And this time I have one called demo 2. Okay, so this is our question. How many protons does the nucleus of a hydrogen atom contain? So this time we want it to be randomized, but it's not going to be a number, it's going to be a word. So we want this, maybe it will say hydrogen, maybe it will say helium. There are many options, obviously, what it could have. We'll just do 2 to make it a quick demo. So what we're going to do here is basically create a couple of versions of our question, and then we'll have it randomly choose a version. So I'm going to create my kind of randomly chosen version. I'm going to call it index. And I'm going to make a random number using the rand function we've already used. And I'm going to create a number. I just want 2 versions. So I want a number that's between 1 and 2. And I'm going to say it just has one significant figure. So my number's either going to be 1 or 2. And now I'm going to have version 1 of the question, which is going to happen if the index is 1, and version 2 of the question, which is going to happen if the index is 2. So I'll show you how I'm going to set that up. So I want to say if the index is 1, then I want the element to be hydrogen. So to show you how I do that, the notation in this program is you write out first your kind of conditional statement. So for the index, and then I do 2 equals signs to show if this is basically asking a question, if the index is exactly equal to 1, then I do a question mark to say that was my question. Now, if that's true, my answer is going to be, so I'm going to create a variable called element and say that it's going to be hydrogen if the index is 1. If you want, you can also add like an else statement. So to do that, you do a colon, and then you would add your like else statement. If you don't want to have an else statement, you can just put 0, and then nothing will happen if it's not true. So if I now put I can add a variable here. I'm going to call it element. You can see right now my element is coming up as hydrogen. Now I want to create a second version, which is when the index is going to be equal to 2. So if my index is 2, then again, that was my question. Then I want the element to be helium. And then I don't want anything to happen if it's not true. So I just put colon 0. So now when I reset the question, in fact, I'm just going to add for us to be able to see here. So we can see when my index is 1, it's giving me hydrogen here. And if I reset when my index is 2, it's giving me helium here. So we just got 2 versions. You could have as many as you want. You could have 10, as many as you want versions of the question.
Yeah, Abby likes to get carried away and have like 10 versions of every question, but just having a few is usually fine.
Here I do. Then we can add our answer. So I'm going to call the answer protons. To calculate that, I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. So if index is 1, I want my answer, which is protons, to be 1. And if my index is 2, I want the answer protons to be 2. So we can see now when index is 1, it's hydrogen, we've got 1 proton. When index is 2, it's helium, we've got 2 protons. Yeah, so that's a really simple word-based way of randomizing. And yeah, you basically create different versions of the question and then have it randomly pick one of the versions. You can also, if you want to get really into it, you can make different images for each version, and you can create a variable called image, and you can put that inside your image tag. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with it. But yeah, that's kind of a simple example.
I had a question.
Yeah,
Sure.
If the 0 wasn't there, what difference would that make?
that's
It
a
would
good question.
it
You will have
would it would just air out. So like
one.
it just needs there to be a colon. Like it's just expecting there to be a colon and then something. Um we're using it slightly different than it's intended to be used. It's usually supposed to say if the index is 1, then make the element hydrogen. Otherwise, and it wants something else for there to do. But if you just put :0, it just means do nothing. I just started thinking of them as like almost like a smiley face that I have to put at the end of a conditional statement.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm. All right. Any other questions on that one before we show you another type?
And depending on what you're doing, you could have like, you could say, you could have set it up like quick.
Uh-oh, Abby, I think we lost you for a second. Abby, will you try talking again?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. I think you might be cutting in and out. Real quick, Abby, will you get
I
your
think there's some sort of delay.
yeah, no worries. While you get that back, I'm gonna show people just really quick. Abby was gonna do another problem with graphs. I just want to show people kind of, or actually let me pause for just a second and see if there are any more questions before we show you a couple other types of problems. All right. And then one other thing to note is is sometimes we do recommend instead of making like different versions of this, like you can also just shuffle the order of your questions. Like maybe you want students to see the helium problem and the hydrogen problem, so you can make both of those problems, and then where Abby was showing you where you set up the course, you could just set up you could just select that you wanted the problems to be in a randomized order. So just be a little bit careful. I think sometimes it can be tempting to over randomize the problems as opposed to sometimes it's just simple enough to put them in a to put them in just put them in a random order. All right, real quick, we had a question in the chat from Laura. She said, "Can you go over the tolerance feature?" Yeah. So, Abby, will you go back to the numerical question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you scroll down, it says the numerical answer tolerance is 2.5%. Basically, all that means is that if a student is within 2.5% of the correct answer, we just mark them right, and we actually change their answer to the exact answer. But sometimes problems, like sometimes we want students to practice significant figures or rounding precisely. We have some problems on there that are about just about rounding. And in those cases, we set the tolerance to 0 because we want them to be exact. There might be some other problems where we want students to estimate. So you could set the numerical tolerance to 5% or 10%. And then if the student is within 5% or within 10%, whatever you set it to, then it still marks them right. We also, you'll see on the next version, and when I share my screen, I can show you it. We also now have a sig figs option, and you can toggle with how many sig figs you want the answers and the random variables to keep, or if you want a certain number of sig figs or a certain number of decimal places. Laura, will you let me know if I answered your question? Yeah. Roberta says, yeah, kind of our general is if students keep at least 3 significant figures, they're good. We don't penalize students for extra significant figures. So yeah, keep at least 3 is what I always teach my students to do. We're not super picky. If they give us more, we still mark it correct. All right. Yeah, Abby, will you show us the graphing type?
Yeah. Okay, so the last one we had. So on this one, we want to show a position time graph. So we've got 2 types of graphs we can make. We've got plot, which makes a line graph, and then we've got bar chart, which makes a bar chart. So I'll make a line graph. So when you click on line graph, it just sets it up with you for you with this specific equation shown. So for my equation here, I just want it to be like a straight line graph. So I'm gonna you don't need to write y equals, you can just write out the equation for your graph. So I'm just going to write m times x plus b for my graph. Right now it's saying unable to plot because I haven't defined what m is and I haven't defined what b is. So I'm going to do that in the extra math. My slope, I'm going to make a random number between 2 and 4. So it's either going to be 2, 3, or 4 because I've got one significant figure chosen. And then for my intercept, I'm going to say a random number between, let's do 2 and 4 again, just as an example. Awesome. So now I've got my M and my B defined. And yeah, so it's giving me my graph. And you can see when I reset, the graph's changing because it's changing what the M and the B are. I can also add my labels. So time and position. I could put some units on there. And then this part here is where you decide on the range you want to show for the x-axis. So I've said like 0 to 10 seconds, but you could pick whatever you want for that. You could randomize it if you want by putting a variable in there instead. But yeah, that's the range of numbers shown on our x-axis. So there's my graph set up. For my question, I've said, what is the bicyclist velocity at 3 seconds? So for this question, the velocity is just going to be the slope. So my answer can just be m, the slope. I'm going to write meters per second, but you could put in that drop-down box if you want with the options for the units. So yeah, so this question you could say is done right now. If you wanted, you could randomize the time here as well. We know that since the slope is constant, it doesn't matter which time you're looking at, the velocity is going to be the same. But you could choose to have that randomized anyway to pick. We can just add that in. Why not? Yeah. Does that cover everything on that one, Jack?
Roberta had a question. She said, could you show them how to do, and Abby, I'm forgetting the notation. I'll be impressed if you remember the like a piecewise graph. So like one velocity for the first 4 seconds and then another velocity after that.
Wait, let me see if I can remember. I think it might have been something like this. Okay, this looks kind of weird because there's like a gap. Let's add another bit.
Abby,
Let's just,
it might actually show you in the notes, and if not, I'll add it to the notes.
oh yeah, sounds good.
Greater than equal to rather than just greater than.
And yeah, it definitely, yeah, one of them will need the equals to on it.
Uh,
Yeah, if you just put an equals on one of those.
I done wrong. Okay, there we go, there we go. Sorry, I was spacing for a second. Still looks kind of weird.
Yeah, we'll have to I think I have it in the notation, but yeah, you can put in piecewise functions. Maybe I don't have it in there, but I'll add that. That's a good question.
Yeah, you can do it, and you may have to do a little bit of jigging to get it to not have gaps. I'll get rid of that now.
There we go. Nice. All right. Yeah, any other questions on the graphs?
I was wondering if you can add grid lines to the graph.
Right now it scales automatically, but that's something that you'll be able to do in the future. And actually, when I show you the simulations, it'll kind of show you the notation that we're planning on using in the future. But yeah, right now it just kind of scales automatically. But yeah, eventually you'll be able to add stuff that kind of overrules our default scaling.
But do I see some grid lines very faintly there in the background of the graph right
Oh
now?
yeah, you might not be able to see. Like, yeah, I think it's just It might be the resolution on the screen. There are grid lines. Yes. Thank you for pointing that out, Betty. Cool. All right. Yeah, then very last thing that I wanted to show you. Yeah, Abby, I'll steal the screen sharing back from you. Is so we are really, really excited. This just was ready as of this morning, I think, if I still have it. So yeah, so this is kind of the next iteration that we're really excited to start building. So these are simulations. And so this was a simple one where you can, it's a free fall, um, similar to one that FET has, but you'll be able to tweak these to have them do whatever you want. This one still has some bugs, so if it doesn't quite work, forgive me on it. But in this one, you can choose an object, a hammer, a marble, or a paper ball. You can choose the height from which the object is released. And when you hit simulate, I need to turn up the speed on that one. It will actually show the object move as well as the time and the speed of the object. This one was a little more complicated. The first one that I made just has, oops, let me go back and find it. The first one that I made, it's just a hammer being dropped from 3 different heights. And this one is literally just 8 lines of code to make an object that can be dropped from various heights. So this would be a whole separate like workshop, but we'll put on one of these probably later in the summer once we work out the kinks on this. I think somebody asked about like adding grid lines, and essentially we're just going to make it, if anyone's familiar with JSON notation, but just kind of a way for you to overwrite some of the defaults we have using some simulation like this. And of course, we'll have lots of notes down here on how exactly to do that. But if you are eager for more simulations on positive physics and chemistry, they're on the way. And if you've ever wanted to like create your own PhET simulation, we're gonna have a way for you to do that as well. Yeah, kind of that's all we had planned. Or that's what we had planned for today. Abby and I are happy to stay on, and if anybody had like some more specific questions about things that they're looking for, like a type of problem they wanted to create or any specific questions, we're happy to stay on and answer those. But if you want to hop off and enjoy your Thursday night, definitely understand. And yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Again, if you have questions, reach out to us anytime. My email address, I know you all have it. And yeah, also in that Facebook group that we made, put questions in there so we can answer them because somebody else probably has the same question that you do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And yeah,
Thank
I'll be sending the recording out to everyone.
Jack, I had a quick question.
Sure.
I don't know if you can see me, but my question is I'm going to be working with a colleague next semester on physics, and I know that sometimes I go through and I sort of like edit the questions that I thought maybe my students wouldn't be able to get at that moment in time.
Mhm.
Is there a way to share those sets of questions with her without having her to go through the questions to edit out for her students as well?
Yeah. So yes, it's pretty easy, but it sounds like kind of a roundabout way to do it. The way that
Okay.
I would do it is actually like, so our courses are pretty set. And so what I would do is I would just clone our course, and you can do it
Okay.
like you could clone our whole course in 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
go to that
Yeah, I
advanced.
started doing that. Yeah.
Mhm. And then just go to the like clone unit.
Yeah.
And so you could clone unit number 1. And then instead of like, underneath the check answers bar, there's that
Yeah.
remove problems button. So
Yes.
instead of doing it that way, because
Yeah.
that like we don't really have a way for you to share that with another teacher, but
Okay.
you could then go to this problem, the insert questions,
Yeah.
and you could instead of like instead of deleting the like you could just go and then like delete the problem.
Oh, much
You
faster.
delete it from your whole course and then save it, and then any change you make will be gone from her course as well.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Okay. And then we'll be able to share the course number.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, that sounds great. That sounds great. Okay. Perfect.
Great.
Thank you so much for tonight. This is wonderful.
Certainly. Thank you.
All right. Well, have a great night.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, yeah. Any questions for anyone else? Feel free to. Oh, Dan had a question. He said, "What is the Facebook group name?" I'll put that in the email. I'll put a direct link to it. And sorry, I just cut
So
somebody off. What was?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hi, Jack. This is
Hey,
Tony.
Tony.
Hey. So I was creating a course and I had my skills. I put them in the wrong order. Okay, so for example, I had vector addition, then followed by vocabulary,
Mhm.
and then constant velocity. I want to put the vocabulary back on top in the beginning. Is there a way to reorder this easily without having to delete and start all over?
Yes, I think so. Okay, yeah. If you go to and I'm showing you my admin account. Let me switch over because I think I have a
Okay.
few extra options that you might not have. So let me make sure this is still working. So if I go advanced, um, yeah, the insert courses, units, and skills. Yeah, so if you go to this page and then scroll to the bottom, there's something that says order.
Oh, there we go.
They don't actually have to, it doesn't have to be like 1 through 7 or whatever, just as long as you have them. And I'm not sure if it'll accept decimals, but as long as you just have those in I think it's copying like the order. I don't know actually how it's coming up with with the order that it's putting in yours, but yeah, you can just change those numbers there and it'll reorder the course for you.
Okay, I'll experiment with that. Okay. And that was where again under
That was under
under
advanced, create
advanced.
courses, units, and skills,
Okay,
and then scroll
great.
all the way to the
Okay,
bottom.
great. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay.
Sure. All right. Adriel said, is there a way to make multiple choice options for type in answer questions to help some students who find it difficult to start off with harder questions? Sorry, is there a way to make? Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I guess if you're asking if you could modify, you could definitely do that. So you could, like when Abby showed you how to create a multiple choice question, like you could use numbers there instead of words. We do that sometimes in problems. There isn't a way to like take our question and modify it. Again, ours were created with like a different editor. But you could make your own questions that were in that format. My only kind of caution with that is sometimes with our multiple choice questions, students just guess and guess and guess until they get the correct answer. So I do like them to type in, but yeah, that's definitely possible. And Adria, will you let me know if I actually answered your question that you were trying to ask? Okay, perfect. Great. Yeah, anything else? All right. Well, I guess Abby and I will go ahead and wrap this up. But yeah, thank you again for coming out. Really appreciate it. We'll send you the recording, send you the link to the Facebook group, and yeah, we're here to help if you need anything. And thank you again for taking some time out of your Thursday evening, or other part of the day if you're in another part of the world, and I think some of you are, to hop on with us. But yeah, thank you again. We're always trying to make this thing better, and you guys really help us do that. All right. Bye.